National parks, that's where we're going to start. Clearly in a park at night, which is illegal because of homelessness. Essentially, that's the only reason why, is to criminalize the homeless. Obviously, people do illicit substances in parks after night too, but that's not really the big issue. It's the fact that it gives people a place to sleep. But yeah, you can't be in a park too late after dark. It won't matter though because you can't go to a park at all soon. Yeah, Trump's gutting the national forest, sold over a bunch of timber contracts to big logging companies. So yeah, half of our national forest will attempt to be logged. I'm sure that people won't let that completely fly, but they're gonna go ahead and try and do it at least. And that's anybody that goes outside too. There's no reason, Democrat or Republican, you should not support the national forest. Idaho is a really big part of that. That's the state I currently live in. It is like 1/3 national forest. It's the only state like that. I think that why we don't need logs, like point blank simple, like especially when we're already burning so many microplastics and destroying our oceans that way. I don't think we need to be manufacturing timber when we could just only manufacture plastic. Like cut one of the evils out. At least we can still look at some trees before they get ripped out by a hurricane that somehow swept 200 miles inland, climate change type shit. But I don't know, it's not really that important. It's not really that important because like the logging companies aren't going to be able to get it done. There's going to be way too many protests at the trees. That's something that people actually care about for sure. So it's not something I'm necessarily concerned about. But the entire way our national parks are set up it's kind of like too late. It's sad. You can look at stuff from museums, like cross sections of 500 feet tall trees that we cut down. Instead of letting them live. So much of our like American beauty, like the actual some of the most beautiful landmarks in the world are in America, and we kind of just tore through everything we could that wasn't like a big rock. Anything that isn't a big rock that we have to blow up. And even then, look what we did to Mount Rushmore, right? I don't know, it looks fine, but at this point Mount Rushmore's greatest purpose is comparing 4 goats. Who are your 4 goats? Your greatest of all time. That's like the best thing that Mount Rushmore is really used for at all. It's really irrelevant, and it kind of gives South Dakota more clout than it should. South Dakota and North Dakota should be combined into one Dakota. I think we need to start really wearing away at state boundaries too, as well as the whole world. We need to come together as like an actual people outside of our government. But that's not really the point of this. It's kind of just to talk about the forests. I guess to pivot from that, go more into government, what could actually be done to preserve our lands. There's plenty of legislation we could do. The legislation doesn't matter though, because the corporations ultimately are gonna, make another law that supersedes that law right after you, because they have infinite money to do so. People forget that Disney is a sovereign nation within the United States. That's what the whole thing in Florida with Ron DeSantis was all about. America signed like a bogus deal giving Disney the ability to govern itself within the bounds of not Universal, but within the bounds of the park in Florida, for their help with some like menial project. So not thinking that this was going to screw us over down the line, assuming corporations wanted to help the people, I guess, but they never did. Yeah. So we have a corporation that's fully a sovereign nation within the bounds of America, just because they were able to pay for it early enough. And I think that we really need to start working on the corporate greed stuff. That's the only thing that's going to get any of the climate change. That's the only thing that's going to get any of the healthcare. That's the only thing that's going to bring us together as people. Like the huge media corporations that are driving the reason you're driving families apart, right? Like your parents would never hate trans people if they never heard about it. They literally wouldn't care like 3 years ago, but the Republican Party intentionally fired up people against minorities, right? As in fact minimizing them to a level in immigrant cases, just like referring to them as migrants, like they're not people. They have dehumanized migrants so much, so that they can go ahead and get it done. They want to actually take out the opposition, and arrest like loyalists or arrest anyone who isn't a Trump loyalist, right? If you read Project 2025, this isn't anything new, but the real thing with like all of that is we got to get out there. If we want to be able to do anything that matters at all, we kind of got to do something about it. I don't know exactly what that's all going to be, but I think a big part of this is uniting individuals, because this isn't the millionaires' fault, right? As much as they do kind of see themselves as above the rest of the people, anyone who doesn't have $1 million, those are the people that we really need to kind of rally as much to our side, straight up out of guilt. Like straight up out of guilt. You wouldn't feel like you wasted your life in a dead-end job just to lose your pension if any of that happened. If we got rid of corporate greed and stuff, right? You wouldn't feel like none of it mattered. You'd feel like you have a reason to keep going, and to achieve your passions. And passions are what initially drove the Industrial Revolution. People wanted to make clothes. People wanted to go out there and build something, a life for themselves, and they had the opportunity to start like homesteading in America and build their own home, and that was enough of a life. But there's no opportunity to really build your own home aside from in areas where you're gonna have to pay taxes. It wasn't the rule of government and the bounds of society as we know them today. And even comparing anything to like that is sad, especially because you would never want it to be like that. You never want to have to step outside and face cholera or whatever, face dysentery walking out to the outhouse as a snake goes and climbs up your leg, right? Like you don't want that. You don't want that. You want to sit in your home on your iPhone. And that's not even like a bad thing, It's okay to live a sedentary lifestyle, but you should be utilizing your resources to do something better with that iPhone, right? So that you can sit in a better location with your iPhone, right? Like you can have more opportunities to relax and feel real comfort, to feel like real, true, happiness. And the only way anyone is going to be able to get that is if we approach a utopian society. Obviously, nobody's ever going to be perfect. Saying that anything could ever be perfect is outrageous. We're always going to be approaching that utopian society. But the sheer nature of corporations is antithetical to society as a whole. If you look at something like the light bulb, right? There's light bulbs from the 1930s that haven't stopped working today. They're still working in a firehouse. There's one that's really popular. The light bulb companies got together and they decided to figure out a way to make it worse so that they could increase revenue, right? The nature of increasing revenue is against the human experience. Everything about increasing revenue is against us in every way. Making the best product is the first part of increasing revenue, and that's where it pretty much stops, right? Everything after that is finding niche ways to manipulate nicher markets and to get more people to buy that product. Whether or not it's a good product at that point, doesn't matter. And once you buy people, once you get to a point in which you've succeeded and people love your product, you then have the opportunity to downgrade in costs majorly and go with cheaper options and then increase profits, right? So the unending goal of constantly increasing profits for companies that are never ending stopped ever becoming about making a good product. They don't want to make a good product. They haven't wanted to make a good product since the 50s. And that's when they started selling the American dream. The American dream was dead before then. They were preaching you this idea that like it was going to happen just like us then. That's why they started doing it. because people already felt the pressure. They already felt the pressure after the war, to look around and really do something. You know, all these industries that got upended, there was plenty of opportunity to come in and profit off of the war, right? And get into the metal industries and even plastic and vinyl, stuff like that. I'm pretty sure records made a big boom after World War II because of that, right? That is not a fact. That is not a fact. You're gonna have to look that one up. This is some lighthearted chit chat, you know? This is some lighthearted chit chat. And what's important about this is talking about it, right? The chit chat half. Whether or not it's actually lighthearted doesn't really matter. The chit chat half, because we're not talking about this stuff. We're letting these corporations take us over and over and over and over for absolutely no reason. You know, to kind of break into my point I said about microplastics way earlier in the beginning, that's something that has gone full-blown out of control because of corporations. The amount of plastics in our oceans, in our air, in our brain. There's a teaspoon of microplastics in your brain on average. Just the average human. The average human. After I heard about the origin of Teflon and how they invented forever chemicals and essentially have a half-life of 150 years, right? So they last longer than we can stop producing them. So that's why the hole in the ozone layer started and stuff. That was due to other stuff specifically, but it's not that important. BPA and stuff, the plastics, there's 100 billion types of plastics because they all have very specific uses and all of them kill you, just at different rates. You know, some of them are very little over billions of years and some of them are a little faster. You know, it doesn't feel real though to a lot of people because of that. It takes too long. But the second that ocean trash started piling up, we should have really taken a look at it. Like really, we the one, you know, the great Pacific trash island or whatever, the Great Pacific Trash Island specifically, the fact that ocean currents have collected in this area and like adjust over time, right? Like the entire Earth has formed in order to design these ocean currents, or it has formed and these ocean currents have formed with it. It's not necessarily causation, but it does correlate, obviously. You wouldn't have the ocean without the Earth. So the ocean has this perfect rhythm, right, where in which the water is currently always flowing in a perfect rhythm all around the globe, all at once, all the time, and then evaporating and going up to move to various areas and fill in smaller bodies of water. And you have things like beavers. What I'm trying to get into is that is so obvious, and you let them trick you. You let them take your mind off of it. Like, that is so obvious that we're destroying the world. There's a huge pile of trash in the current. The current all like builds a crazy landfill in the ocean, and we don't care about it because we can't see it. It's pretty much just, if it were like on the coast of California, we would have stopped that trash like 100 years ago. So long ago that trash would have been gone. And the oceans matter. The oceans are very, very, very important. The ocean is what starts life on Earth. You know, that's where we came from. 75%, 60 to 75% of the world's oxygen comes from platelets, which is microorganisms that process carbon dioxide from the ocean and give that to us. So I know you think it's all trees, but like we could even do without the trees. We could even do that without the trees. We can't do without the ocean. It's super important. So yeah, that'll lead me into my next clip.
All right, we're gonna talk about the deep sea. I know it's a bit weird considering I'm standing in some kind of forest next to a river, but we're gonna talk about the ocean. 80% of the ocean is undiscovered, right? Or something like that. The statistic is probably way more than that. Like, we haven't been in every square inch of water possible. It seems pretty clear if you look at it, like the planet is really made for that kind of life. All the life underneath the deep sea ocean is constantly, we're constantly finding new species and variations of species, and there's species we've been hunting for years that we know about, but we have never seen in the wild. It's almost impossible to pin anything down. It's seemingly infinite in vastness, but I don't think it is. I think we need to be reconsidering all of our options and how we analyze the ocean. I think we need to use cloning to create cyborg organisms that can swim at depths, you know, the likes untold, right? You can turn stem cells into a computer. I don't know, there's a Thought Emporium video about it. I'm not really the biggest expert on this, but integrating technology into a living organism is possible. So why not a camera, right? That's all I'm thinking. If we get a existing species that's down there at these deep sea depths, maybe a squid or something like that. Obviously they have a lot of predatory instincts, and that kind of acts as like a defense mechanism for the drones. But you can send out a drone army of squids, clone squids with computers in them that report back to us what's actually going on within the ocean. And maybe that could get to what those people said. In the last lighthearted chit chat, I was talking about that, the alien thing. Now they said that there were definitely deep sea underwater aliens in the court hearing. I just find it interesting that they're saying this under oath. It seems like they at least believe it. Whether or not this is all perfect timing to cover up for something, like what could they possibly be covering up for when the evil's right in front of our face? I don't think it's that anymore. I used to believe that that every time aliens would pop up, it would be like a cover-up. But I think that the news just has a certain, you know, cadence of rolling out. Like everything has a beat that we as humans all together kind of decide without really deciding it. And, you know, we couldn't be ready for more alien information, you know, unless it was something really big, right? So the smaller stuff rolls out just incrementally over time, like anything else would. You know, a thing you could kind of point to is like the rampant, you know, gross, I'll just say really, really gross stuff with Hollywood, right? We've always all known about that, you know, like the kids being taken and stuff. And there were even island jokes, like since I was a child, right? And, you know, you've seen the Alvin and the Chipmunks clip where the Alvin and the Chipmunks are making a joke about, I'll probably censor that because they don't like you even saying his name anymore on these platforms, but it's fine, whatever. You've seen it. You know what I'm talking about, right? And slowly over time, we get more and more information about it, like we would anything big like this. I was watching a Veritasium video. Veritasium is great. I don't know. Some of the way he structures content isn't necessarily all for me, but I mean, I'm just into that kind of content. So he's super informative, that's for sure. But I was watching a video he made on this tower that was built in New York that was gonna fall over. The tower was gonna knock over if they didn't do something about it. So they did something about it, right? And we didn't get information, really, the public didn't get all the details about how catastrophic it could have been until like 10, 20, then like even later, right? We get this full kind of story breakdown now. When I think it was in the 80s, I don't really remember all that well, but it wasn't really that deep. Nothing fell. It was like they saved the day, you know, which I guess is a lot deeper than it being, you know, a catastrophe. But there's not as much to take in, I guess. You have to really consider like what a mistake like this can make to how it can affect individual lives when death's involved. So that it's a lot more to consider, more readily, it's a lot more that's readily available to consider, right? It makes a lot more sense. But a catastrophe like that being averted, you know, you can consider all the like potential deaths and stuff, but I'm more interested in the engineering side of things. You know, how did they go about keeping this secret to the social manipulation? There's a whole bunch of different details, right? And you haven't got any of these details in any form of media before the internet. The internet is what causes us to be so informed, and right now we are in an over information age. We need to refocus to like our niches and stuff like that, so we can retain more important information to our local environments, so that it all can get built up at once. That's not really that's not a crazy take. I don't think that's a crazy take. We all need to be doing more at home, and if we can take the next steps and like pull back the power from these huge corporations who can do so much just by waving their hand, right? It is hard to get out there and get on your hands and knees in the dirt and do all that, but like, it is hard to get out there and really get doing the work and providing for your community or whatever, but it's not impossible. And everybody needs to just be doing what they can, and especially fighting against corporations in every step of the way. We need to support small businesses and take down the local regimes too. Everywhere you live, you'll have like that business that kind of runs it, and then from there, there's like the businesses we all know, but everything is so ingrained in our society. I think that the America and the Industrial Revolution coincide, right? Like they go hand in hand. Textile mills and the steam energy, electricity, right? All of these go hand in hand with American ingenuity. I think that it is part of the problem. We've taken all those readily available opportunities to make huge developments, so that they are making micro developments on profits and things that are very obvious to see go up, right? It's hard to do something like climate change. Climate change is an easy one, but it's hard to focus on the things that are going to take more than 100 years. If you really try and even focus on doing a 1-year plan, let alone, a 20, 40, 60, 100-year plan, like it could be anything. It can be, but that's what society is, right? It's the plans of like 10 billion people all in union working together to get to the next step of society, right? So we need to have better plans working together more efficiently. Tyranny is tyranny, though. That's just obvious. You can see like the same exact stuff happening over and over again that like has happened in history, just with a new font. But I'm fairly confident that we are going to be able to work our way out of this. And while it may seem dark, especially with stuff like the 2028 hats, it does just say Trump 2028, right? So, and it's the red hats with MAGA. It may be referring to his family as a whole, sort of creating, like forcing a monarchy and giving them more time to whittle away democracy and create institutions in which they can force elections, right? Just like they've done in Russia. But that's not necessarily what's going to happen. Anything could happen. It's just playing it by ear at this point, till 2028. I made a TikTok about that recently, but that's not really what's important. 4 years doesn't matter. 4 years doesn't matter. 400 years doesn't matter. 4,000 years doesn't matter. It's about the entirety of time. Like it's about all of time in one. You can't really consider that on your own, right? But you need to think about what you can do to make things better for like generations, 10 billion years in the future, right? Do you want them to have an Earth, or do they not need it, right? Do they want pictures in a museum? I think we all learned that seeing 450 foot trees that got cut down for no reason other than they needed wood, we appreciate them more in person when they're still growing. I think that we all like that a little more. That's why I try and step out into nature. It pushes me outside of my comfort zone, forces me to kind of be in the public and talking and stuff. It bothering people, I guess, but I don't know. I don't care. I don't care about bothering people. I'm not doing anything bad. But it's important. It's important to bother people about the stuff that matters. And what you believe matters is entirely up to you. You can't consider that. You need to worry about like your opinions and your line in the sand, where you're gonna take it and what you can do. You don't need to worry about the morality of others at all, because all together we do that, right? And that's what shame and the feeling of accomplishment, stuff like that. Like all of these emotions are rooted within a need to progress, right? We have the entire concept of a sedentary lifestyle is because we want to get past that. We always want to keep moving forward. We're constantly in a period of expansion. It may feel like with the introductions of phones and things that we're approaching like a Dune style 10,000 years of stagnation, but you know, I don't think that that's happening. I still believe that we'll put down this mass technology addiction and the rampant advertising and things like that. We'll put all that down eventually. Yeah, society's really dystopian right now. To speak on advertising specifically, I saw an ad with Will Ferrell. I clicked off of it in 4 seconds, but I'll describe the 4 seconds I saw that disgusted me. Will Ferrell was in line at a store. He pops out behind the lady who's on her phone and says, "Are you online shopping while in the store?" I clicked away instantly because the first thing I thought was, are we really at that point that life is just spending money to spending money to spending money on things that we don't need whatsoever, just like absolute bullshit, you know? I'm trying to curse less. That's my bad. But it matters. It's important. I don't care to use an exclamation because it's how we hear, how we really hear, how we like this. You know, it's crazy. We need to take all of that kind of energy that we're spending on building these corporations, which are doing us harm, and putting it into building ourselves and building our communities, and then all together we can rise up. I think that the internet has led to this over information age, and the amount of information we have is beautiful, right? The internet is the most important invention of mankind, more important than the wheel or fryer, because we can all communicate. Communication is what led all human innovation across all of time, right? Being able to talk to one another and bounce ideas off of each other, right? Like the one Wright brother wouldn't be able to make the airplane without the other, right? As a human race, all together, even if you look at your phone, hundreds to thousands of millions ideas probably all went into making this phone, from who knows how many people, it's countless, to like somebody who mentions something offhand to one of the developers, or the amount of time and energy you're pouring into just thinking about the project as a developer. The ideas are what matters, and not enough people are having ideas because we feel like there's too many ideas already. We're in this cloud, a really common cultural zeitgeist. I think we need to pull social media away from the community of all of us, like the whole world, and bring it more focused on what like a local community is, and talking to your neighbor again, right? Starting small businesses and being able to build up the small stuff. Every step matters, and we stop taking steps because we felt like someone was taking them for us, whether that be in a political sense, right? You just get tired of protesting, or in consumer sense. Everybody is a consumer in one way or another, but you got to do the best you can to not over consume and be sitting there just draining your life away on a phone or TV or laptop, tablet. You know, it's very ironic for me to say that while speaking into the camera, but that's the world we live in. Human beings can be A and B, right? You don't need to take it all away. That's the beauty of having free will. It's the dichotomy of all decisions you make. You know, all things that could be and are, right? Like you can consider that within yourself, what it even means to you to be able to see the positive and negatives and ration that out. I have a deeper theory for another video on that, but we'll leave all that here. I appreciate you for sticking around. Leave a like. It probably already told you to do that if I remember to edit that in, but it doesn't matter. Thank you for sticking around. I love you. Follow my other socials. The album might already be out, or it's coming out, depending on how fast I edit this video. Goodbye.